Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Spy. This episode will just be me listing possible occupations in order of how much I would want to read a book about them. No, not really. We're talking about John le Carre's spy novel. Written during the depths of the Cold War by someone who had just taken off his diving helmet, this book is now a snapshot of a bygone era. Thank goodness all that nastiness with the Russians is behind us. A foil to the ridiculous antics of James Bond, this novel tells the story of a more realistic spy. George Smiley had no business sneaking onto Dr. No's island and would have flubbed hitting on Honeychild if he had. It's all a bit confusing to these American cousins, so we stumbled into a liquor store and bought sherry in a fit of complete ignorance. Join us and sip along as we decide if this spy novel is a classic. It's time for episode 119 of Toasting the Classics, Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Spy. Welcome to Toasting the Classics, a podcast where we take something that people call a classic and we talk about it while we drink something inspired by the classic. This is the true format. This is the true lineup. We are back to what we're supposed to be doing. We're not in the studio, but you do have Dave McArthur and
Dr. Professor Clint Lanier.
He of the many titles. Yeah. Here to talk to you today. What do we choose to talk about?
Well, this is your choice. This is
true. It's true.
John. Okay, so I'm going to say that. I'm
going to
try to say the name. John
Le
Carre.
John le Carre is how I always heard it. I don't know,
Carre.
but it's not his real name anyway. So
yeah, it's really not. So, but it's Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Spy.
Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Spy. Right. This is the book. We're doing the book, not the film,
book,
or
not the film. Right.
I gathered. I think I knew there was a TV series. I thought it was a movie. The one with Alec Guinness is apparently a TV series from BBC back in the day.
Was it a TV series, or I think it was a mini series? Well,
yeah,
what they would call a mini series. Yeah. I think that's sort of what BBC did. It has sort of always done, but it was published in 1974, and it was the first of what they call the Carre trilogy, a series of books that he wrote that involved kind of two main characters, a guy named George Smiley, who was one of the top spy chiefs in the British MI6, or what he calls the circus, and a character named Carre, who's the top spy chief for the Russians. This is very much in the depths of the Cold War in the 1970s.
We're continuing our chronicle of everything that happened in the year 1974, by the way. Just like
yeah, mid-70s.
Very important to this podcast.
Yeah. So had you ever read this before?
No, I had never read this one before. I can't remember. I think it just came up when I had finished a book on Audible and I was sort of scanning through to find something that was on my long-term list to read. And I saw this and I started listening to it. I looked it up a little bit and I realized how much, it's not just a book. I mean, it's really like highly acclaimed. So I was thinking that's perfect for something we could do for the show. And it's on Audible. I can't remember if it was free on Audible. Is that why I chose it, or was it not?
I don't think it wasn't free for me. We pay monthly for Audible, so
yeah. So I listened to it on there, and I thought it seemed like a really good book, like something to talk about. So I let you know about it, and here we are today talking about it.
Had you ever read any of his stuff?
No, but my dad is a big fan, so it was always in the back of my mind, oh, I should read some of these books. And I kind of was looking at the list of books, and I knew The Spy Who Came In From the Cold. That one I've heard of. And I saw the movie The Russia House when I was a kid. I didn't realize that was one of his books, too. I remember that movie being kind of a disappointment for a lot of people at the time, the Russia House. It had Sean Connery
and Michelle Pfeiffer, I think, right?
That sounds right, yeah. And I think it was sort of on the heels of Hunt for Red October, so people were like, oh, let's go back and do some Cold War spy movies. It was a lot like his writing. John le Carre's writing is not as exciting as Tom Clancy or Ian Fleming. But what do you think about that in terms of if you compare those kind of writers? I'm assuming you've read Tom Clancy. I know you've read Ian Fleming because we did it for the show. But
yeah, I've read Tom Clancy as well. So, it's interesting. I've read The Spy Who Came In From the Cold.
Oh, okay. Cool.
And it was sort of written as an anti-James Bond book and character and approach. He thought that John le Carre, so background, John le Carre, or Cornwell, I think is his real name.
Yeah, David Cornwell, yeah.
David Cornwell was in the MI6. He was a British spy, what you would call a spy, up until 1963 when he was outed to the KGB. His cover was blown and he had to leave the agency.
Did you see a story about how that happened? Like how he got his cover blown? Okay.
Yes. Yeah, we can go into that. So he was a part of MI6, and so that does give him credibility and authority, okay? And so he wrote The Spy Who Came In From the Cold as sort of an antithesis to James Bond, Ian Fleming's James Bond. So James Bond was flashy and kind of in your face, and he would do all these wild, big escapades, get the girl, beat up the bad guy. We did the whole Dr. No thing, get gangs of whatever he called them in Jamaica, have the flashy cars and stuff.
Yeah.
Le Carre thought, okay, that's all ridiculous and garbage. That, espionage, the true art of espionage is boring. It's done in the shadows. It's grimy.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
very intellectual. He wrote that's how what his spies always were. And so the spy who came in from the cold was very much a kind of dark, very slow moving, intellectually based versus like physical or brute force based type of
Right.
spy. And it was all set in the Cold War about this spy who just supposedly turns double agent. And there's a lot of tragedy that goes into it. Now, here's the thing, though. Ian Fleming was also part of MI6.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, and he said he based James Bond on people he knew, like
Right.
very specific people he knew that were like that were spies and so forth. And so there is a character in Tinker Tailor who is like James Bond. There's
Uh-huh.
like
I
two
was
of
gonna
those
say.
people. There's a
Yeah.
particular branch, they're called the Scalp Hunters. And
Hmm.
and these guys are sort of like these secret agents
Hmm.
that are lone wolf at a city, in the middle of Europe that do these kind of flashy things. And I'm like, well, okay, that's sort of what Ian Fleming was talking about was those guys.
Yeah.
Whereas John le Carre is talking about the people that do the planning,
Right.
that do the very bureaucratic, slow stuff, right? So I'm sort of like, both worlds exist.
So both worlds, so definitely, I think that Le Carre, he's dealing with sort of a distinction between like field agents.
Yes,
Like Ricky Tarr is the character I think you're talking about, who's like the
yes,
field agent who goes out and basically the Carre depicts him as like, yeah, he's, better looking and better shape and he's out there, but he's like an idiot, basically.
right,
He's kind of a
right.
moron, like, which is not really true. I mean, you couldn't survive very long in the field if you were actually an idiot, but he's not smart like the guys that work in London behind the
Well, I
scenes.
think, but there's also Jim Prideaux, who
Uh-huh.
I think is very much more like because Sarr is a moron, but Jim Prideaux is suave, debonair, has a
Yeah.
very kind of liberal arts background, very intellectual. There's some weird stuff that we'll talk we can probably talk about later
Yep.
that sort of
Yep.
was my surprise. But
Yep. 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 That was very
but
surprising to me.
like he was more of like a James Bond guy. He goes undercover,
Hmm.
goes in, he has a cover, I should say, and he knows how to speak Russian and he goes behind the Iron Curtain and blah 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 and a bunch of stuff. Has a gunfight and all this other junk. To me, like that, I'm like, well, that's James Bond. And I guess you can't have one out beside the other because in Carre's novel, focus on a guy named George Smiley, who is
Right.
I guess he's like kind of like he would be like a number three guy at the
Sounds
agency.
about
So he's
right. Yeah.
not the top dude. A couple of rungs below that,
Top dude is
you got
Control, which is a weird
control,
name.
right?
I don't know whether
There's a
I
name,
guess that
right?
must be a code name or something,
Yeah, I
but
guess so. But Smiley, like he's in charge of interrogation. He runs field agents. He does all this other stuff. But he's overweight. He's bald. He's got big
yeah.
jowls, and he's kind of like if you looked at him, you wouldn't think he was very much of anything. But the guy like has a huge brain,
Yeah.
and in that role, that's what you need.
He's very much like a foil to James Bond, right? Like not
Yes,
only is he physically kind of unimpressive and he's much older and he's behind the scenes, but also like his wife is cheating on him is like a big part of the
right,
story, and it's like
yeah,
that
yeah,
James Bond would have killed that guy. Like, like
yeah, right, right.
first of all, that would never happen. James Bond, I don't think would ever get married. Or did he get married at one point in
He
one of
did,
the,
yeah, he
but then
did.
his wife died or something pretty
Immediately,
quickly afterwards? Yeah.
because he
Yeah.
can't be married. So she
That's
immediately got shot.
predictable. Yeah.
Yeah. Was it on Her Majesty's Secret Service, I think, or
I think
maybe
that's what I was
the
gonna
spy,
say.
the spy who loved me?
Spy Who
One of
Loved
those
Me,
two.
maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, that's who it was. But see, even in James Bond, you had M, who was
Right.
but M could have been Control or it could have been like George Smiley. I mean, M was
Mhm.
a guy at the top that directed the field agents like James Bond.
One of the big differences is also it's not even just the character, but it's also just James Bond deals with like comic book villains,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
He's not
yeah,
up
it's true.
against the Russians. He's not like doing actual espionage. He's like some kind of weird international crime fighter who's always
Yeah.
coming up against people like Dr. No. Whereas this is really set, it's fictional, obviously, but it's really set in the real world. They're going to the Czech
Yes.
Republic and they're
Right.
behind the Iron Curtain in Eastern Europe and things like that, that actually
Right.
would be realistic depictions of what would be going on, I would think. Trying to
Yeah.
find military secrets, essentially, for the most part, is what they're trading in.
Yeah.
So it's pretty different than whatever it is James Bond is doing, which I would think would
Right.
be FBI work or something. I don't know who would be doing that job.
Well, I
Like
think
Interpol
maybe that's the thing that separates them is Le Carre's stuff seems sort of boring. Like it
Mm,
involves, oh, there's a double agent, so let's write 500 pages about finding a double agent.
right.
Whereas in James Bond, the double agent would have been found and shot within the first 5 pages. And then you're going to go after this, like you said, big international guy that's stealing nuclear bombs or something, you know?
Something
So,
insane. Like basically
yeah,
Doctor Evil is who he'd be
yeah.
going after. So
Schmersh or Chaos or whatever they called themselves.
we're doing this old school. So what are we drinking this time?
What are we drinking? It was your suggestion.
All
So,
right. Well, so I looked up some things. I was saying what drinks were mentioned in the book because honestly, I read the whole book and didn't catch anything. But I knew
no,
they were drinking. People in the 70s in Britain were definitely drinking
of
all
course,
the
yeah.
time. It's like Mad Men. There's alcohol at every single gathering. There was a big party where they had a bunch of punch at one point,
Mhm.
at least in the film. I don't remember that in the book, but
I don't remember that in the
I
book
found
either.
I found one that was interesting where they mentioned giving sherry to the Americans when they showed up because the Americans are
Mhm.
too stupid to know which sherries would be any good. So
Mhm.
they have sherry for our American cousins. So since we're American, I thought it would be kind of good if we had sherry.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, that
Yeah,
makes sense. Well,
that's
there was obviously there was vodka was a big part of it.
Yep, vodka.
There was Burgundy. When Smiley and Gillum go to that cafe where all the food is terrible, and the Burgundy he
Right.
orders a
And the
bottle of
waiter
Burgundy
the waiter
King.
doesn't know how to behave as a waiter because
Right.
society is falling apart in the
Yeah.
70s.
Smiley keeps taking a drink of this terrible wine, making a face and saying, delicious Burgundy. Thank you. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, that's right.
Um,
That would have been good actually. I actually
but but
forgot
I
about that
but
scene.
I
That would have
think
been a
since
good
we
one.
are American, we are their American cousins.
Yeah, I
Cheers
think that's a
with
good way
some
to go. Yeah, cheers.
with
What
some
did you
sherry.
get for your sherry?
The cheapest dry sherry I can find. How about you? Because we are American, dumb Americans after all.
We are dumb Americans, so I didn't want to get anything really fancy. So I went down to the liquor store and I said, "Do you have any sherry?" And the guy handed me these two airport bottles of blackberry. What is it? Let's see. It's blackberry and brandy. So I don't even know what that means. Blackberry wine, I guess, with
I think
brandy added
so.
to
Yeah,
it.
that is
So
hilarious.
that
That
can't
is
be
the
legit
funniest. That
sherry.
is
Sherry is fortified wine from a particular region in
yes,
Andalusia. I
yes.
don't think this is anything legitimate. I mean, I don't know. Let's
Well,
see.
I
I'm
mean
going to take a
that
step.
so it's wine, blackberry wine, probably fortified with brandy. I mean, technically that would be sherry, I suppose.
And not by the regional appellation or what you're actually supposed to use. It tastes okay actually. I don't really mind it,
Yeah,
but
it's okay stuff. It's been around for a long time. The French used it to, they would send wine on their ships back in
mm,
the 16th century, starting the 16th century, whereas the British used rum. Wine would spoil, obviously, if it was in casks too long, so especially out at sea. So a fortified wine would not spoil, it would keep. So that's what sherry was sort of, as everything does, it became kind of desirable, so to speak.
so
So
what is a fortified wine?
they take essentially they take brandy, they take distilled grape spirits, and they
Hmm.
mix it with wine.
Okay.
It increases the alcohol from about 10 to 12%, which is where wine typically is, to about close to 20%.
It tastes pretty
Yeah,
strong. I mean, it might just because of
yeah,
what I'm drinking is crummy, but
yeah.
it definitely tastes like there's alcohol in it.
If you take a glass of wine and you put a thimbleful or a couple of thimblefuls of brandy in it, then
Hmm.
that's essentially fortifying it. But the thing about sherry is there's a process to making sherry where they take a bunch of different wines, old wines and new wines, and they mix them all together to create sherry, like the flavor of it, and they fortify it. So that's actually the process of making sherry. So you can't just take wine, put some brandy in it, and call it sherry. You
Okay.
have to go through this whole mixing process, which is what makes sherry. So yeah, blackberry wine with a brandy pickleback
I don't think
doesn't
that's
quite cut it.
I don't think that's appropriate. I don't think that's
Yeah,
legit sherry,
I
but
don't
hey,
think so
stretch the
either.
imagination. But I don't mind drinking it though. It's actually pretty tasty. But
That's what you get at bodegas. And
you can buy beer at
uh,
bodegas, and then otherwise for wine or any hard liquor, you have to go to liquor stores in the city.
wow,
I don't
okay,
know if that's New York law or New York City or whatever, but it's
yeah,
special locations for anything,
that's really
other
interesting.
than beer or seltzer or anything like that.
All right, so that's what we're drinking. That's what they drink. We're their dumb American cousins.
We're the dumb
So
American cousins, exactly. We are definitely dumb American cousins, no question
yes.
about it. I'm not even sure I'm embarrassed about that. I think I'm kind of okay with that.
Although God bless the British. Every Brit I know has a superiority complex. We couldn't have won World War II without their help, and they had to
Oh,
save us in World War One. And
one of my favorite jokes I saw was the World Cup was going on, and
uh-huh.
John Stewart was talking to John Oliver, and he was like, "Okay, so I hear you guys are playing Germany tomorrow." John Oliver was like, "Yeah, we got Germany tomorrow. We're really excited about
What's
it."
it
And
about?
John Stewart's like, I just want to let you know, if you guys get into any trouble, we're just right next door. We'll come
Yeah.
over.
Yeah, right.
They
That's
played it out.
awesome.
John Oliver's getting
Yeah.
all angry about it.
It would be funny. I mean, like in the book, essentially, Le Carre's characters are suggesting that the American spy agencies are crap, don't know what they're doing, and are stupid and blah. This is after World War II when England got the crap smacked out of them. And,
Right.
we're barely holding on to their island until we showed up. Post World War II, we had the biggest economy the world had ever seen
Hmm.
and richest country the world had ever seen. I'm pretty sure our spy network was probably pretty good.
What I gather is there's a split implied in this book, and maybe it goes on through the other stuff, is that there's some of the people, the ones who are interested in the Merlin operation, like
Mm-hmm.
Alaline and all those guys, they
Mm-hmm.
think the Americans are amazing and they really want to work with the Americans. And then
Mm.
there's these sort of like an old guard British spies who are like, the Americans,
And what do
and
they
I think
know?
it's
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I think it's kind of a divide between how they look at things. And I don't really know that much about what was going on at the time, but I do kind of think the early Cold War, maybe we were a little inexperienced. We didn't have like an empire to build on. So I think maybe there was some
Mm.
inexperience with there's a lot of money obviously behind what we were doing, and I'm sure there were a lot of
Yeah.
really talented people, but I think we were a little
Well,
clumsy in some of the
that's
operations that we did.
certainly true. We didn't colonize half the world like some countries did.
No, that's right. That's
So
right. We didn't
and
really have
have operatives. Let's see, in
yeah.
China because they made them buy opium, or in India because they stole their land there, or in Africa because they
Yep.
stole their land.
Yep.
Anyway, I could go
The way,
on, but I won't.
the way they got all that international experience was not that pretty. So I
Yeah,
think
it's not. That was the funniest thing about the British. If you've ever been to the British Museum in London?
I
Um,
have, yeah.
one of the best museums I've ever been to. I loved it. And the biggest like complaint that people have is everything was stolen. Everything in that museum was stolen. It's like you see the sarcophagi from Egypt, and then you think, how did they get that? Or you see like the temple entrance
Hmm.
from got from Greece or something, and you wonder,
Oh yeah,
I
yeah.
wonder how that got to England. Isn't that weird?
Yep.
And
Yep.
on and on and on. There's a lot of people that are for repatriation, but if they had to repatriate everything in that museum, there would be no museum.
There'd be nothing left. Yeah, you could
There'd
see
be
why they
nothing
kind
at
of want to
all.
draw the line and not get taken down that.
Yeah.
One thing I think is really interesting about this, and I think the book itself was written in the 70s, and so it was written during the Cold War. So this is a
Right.
little bit of a comment on the film, right? Is that a lot of the time when you talk to people today about what the Cold War was like, especially like people my daughter's age that just don't remember it, they didn't live
Oh,
through it,
right.
they
Mhm.
talk about the Cold War like it was this sort of ridiculous boondoggle. Like, oh, we were just wasting our time fighting communism. And one of the really cool things about going back and reading this or watching this film is that you remember how this was not something where we knew we were going to win. This was
Yeah.
something we really actually thought probably we were going to lose the Cold War in a lot of ways. Like many people, especially I'm sure in Britain, and it brings back that sense that it was actually like kind of a desperate struggle. And I think that that's been forgotten today. Like I think about that all the
Yes.
time.
That's a good
There's
point.
there's this shot in the film where a couple of MiGs like fly over the museum in
Hmm.
Budapest, and it sort of like
Hmm.
establishes exactly how like this is kind of a touch and go situation that could turn into a war at any minute. It's not just some silly thing. I think the fight against communism is depicted as being sort of ridiculous today, but it's just
Hmm.
because it didn't turn into a war and it didn't turn into us getting conquered by the communists, so people sort of forget what it was about.
Right. It didn't turn into a war, but there were hundreds of casualties from
Hmm.
the end of World War II to when actually probably post Berlin Wall coming down, even afterwards, there were probably, spies because spies were killing,
Yeah.
whacking each other left and right for 40 years. So,
This stuff
um,
was real. Like I grew up in
yeah.
DC and I could think of multiple incidents. There was a basketball court not too far from my house. I played there a couple of times and it was the drop point for this guy who was selling secrets to the Soviets and he ended up getting busted. And I remember like I was like, "Oh, I know exactly where
That
that was."
FBI,
This
was
guy
it that FBI agent
I think so. Yeah, I think it was an FBI agent.
who
He
was
was
a who
leaving
was a counter? He was funny because he was a counterintelligence agent
Mhm.
and he was a double agent.
Yeah, he was a
Very
double
weird. Yeah.
agent. So this stuff was
Yeah.
really going on. I mean,
Yeah.
I knew lots of people whose parents worked in the CIA, and they were
Mhm.
definitely more like Smiley. than James
Yeah.
Bond. They were
Yeah.
nothing
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
James Bond. They were like
Yeah.
nerdy older people that like
Yeah.
were very specialized and knew a ton about a certain thing, but couldn't talk about it at all. I knew a girl whose dad worked in the quote unquote communications division at
Mhm.
at the State Department, which everybody knows is the guys who were at the CIA. So
Mhm.
like it's like when you're deployed, they were in Cuba, and apparently I guess he must have been a CIA agent working in Cuba under
Mhm.
a thin cover. But so this stuff was all real, it was a real thing. It's not.
Yeah.
I guess it's kind of fortunate that it's been a little bit forgotten because, like I said, it didn't turn into a war, so it seems
Right.
kind of silly to
Right.
kids these days.
So, do you want to give us the plot?
Yeah, that's a good idea. So one of the big things about this book is that you're starting in medias res, right? It's like there's
Mhm.
already been this botched spy operation. There's two bad spy operations. There's one, oh my God, the one in Czech Republic is called what? Or it's not, why am I saying Czech Republic? It's Czechoslovakia at the time.
Czechoslovakia at the time. Yeah.
Oh, Testify. The
Yes.
the
Oh,
um the
Project
operation's
Testify.
called
Yeah.
the operation is
Yes.
called
Operation.
Testify,
Yeah.
and I don't
Uh-huh.
even really 100% know what it was supposed to accomplish, but the point is that it was completely botched and the Russians knew about it from the get-go. Shot Prideaux who was supposed to be involved in it and just completely busted up the operation. And it
Mhm.
led to everybody being fired. But this is all backstory. This is all stuff that
Yes.
happened before the events of this
Right.
book. This led
Mhm.
to Control being fired. This led to Smiley ending up outside the operation. Preto got shot, and he's working as like I
Teacher.
guess like a creepy pogo ball Joe who lives behind a school somewhere in Middle
He's a
England. I don't
French
know,
teacher.
like
Yeah, he's a French
a French teacher. Okay, yeah,
and
that's
drama
right.
teacher. Yeah.
Anyway, they're all completely knocked out of the spy service, out of the circus by that operation. And there's also this other one, Merlin, which
Mhm.
is an operation where what's happening is the Russians are feeding them crummy information and tricking them into thinking it's good so that they'll feed back good information. Those two things are going on behind the scenes. But what ends up happening is Smiley gets dragged back in to deal with this Ricky Tarr situation,
Mhm.
who's a guy who has I think he's just fallen for a honeypot. What do you think? What do you think about that? Do you think he fell for a honeypot? Or is there something really that he could have learned? How stupid is Ricky Tarr, I guess is the question.
Okay, so what happens is there's this agent. He's a field agent named Ricky Tarr, and he's one of these agents, one of these almost like a James Bond agent, who's by himself, and he's supposed to essentially make contact with what is supposed to be a Russian double agent, potential double agent, and they are in where was it? Was it Hong Kong or
Istanbul, I think.
oh, it's Istanbul? Okay,
Or that's in
and
the film. It's in Istanbul in the film, so maybe
I
I'm way
I think
off.
it's in I want to say it's in Hong Kong or something like that.
Oh, it
In
is. It is. You're right.
yeah,
You're
in
absolutely
the
right.
book.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
so he starts tailing this guy, and the guy isn't acting like a normal what would be somebody who wants to be a double agent. So he goes to break into the guy's room. His wife is there. His wife apparently falls in love with the British agent. Turns out his wife and and the Russian are both spies, Russian spies, and their
Hmm.
cover is that they're these trade diplomats or something like that. She says that she wants to go to the British to
Hmm.
leave the Russians, and she'll give them all the secrets and everything else. Tar sends a telegram to his controllers in London and says, "Hey, this girl wants to come in, and this is who she is. Everything else." She's immediately arrested,
Hmm.
and that tips them off to somewhere there's a breach somewhere. They found out about her.
Right.
It could only have been from my telegram. Then he finds a diary from her, and the diary confesses that there's a mole in the British Secret Service. So he's on the lam, as they might say.
Hmm.
He's running because he thinks that his life's in danger. He finally makes it back to Britain, spills the beans to some people he thinks he can trust, and then Smiley gets dragged into it. Here's the story because they figure out yes, there's a mole in the agency, and the reason that Project Testify went downhill was because of this mole
Right.
who informed on it. And Jim Prideaux got shot because of the mole. A bunch of agents have died because of this mole. And so that's where we are. Like as you said, that's where we sort of pick it up at. And then the rest of the book is Smiley trying to figure out who this mole is. It's him going around to these different characters, interrogating them. And as he interrogates them, you get little pieces of the puzzle. You know, it's one of those things where as a reader, you don't have the full clarity of events that the protagonist does. The
Right.
protagonist has, you know, a 10,000-foot view, whereas you don't. He's able to take these pieces of conversation and fit them all together and then end up he ends up busting the mole at the very end, which
And we
is
haven't mentioned that this is where the title of the book comes from, is that
yes,
Control was onto the idea of the mole. So he had it narrowed down to five guys, and he gave each of them a name from this old, I guess it's a nursery. I've never heard it
yeah,
before. Is it something you're familiar with? I'd never heard that
yeah.
before.
Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Baker.
I know the
Uh,
butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker,
yeah, it's something like that.
but
It's a close one. It's a close relative
it's similar,
of that
right?
one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's basically like each guy has one of these names. It's
Yes.
Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Poor Man, Beggar Man, and each of the and one of them is
Mhm.
Smiley, by the way, is one of the people he had suspected of possibly being
Right.
the mole. So
Potentially, yeah. Smiley figures out who the mole is. They bust him at the end. The mole turns out to be a very distinguished member of MI6. He's
mhm,
also like a relative to a minister of parliament, a
yeah,
House of Lords type of guy. He's got a royal background. He's Oxford educated. He's part of the upper class. He's also betting Smiley's wife.
so I was
Um,
gonna ask that. I mean, obviously, this is part of like the foil to James Bond, right? Having the guy's
mhm,
like wife cheating on him, but at the same time, it's an interesting story because he talks about how he had trouble going after Carla because he kept talking about what the guy's wife would think, and he realized afterwards he was like, I'm just projecting onto this guy. This guy doesn't care about
right.
his wife. I'm upset about my wife, and I care
Yeah.
about my wife. So I think it gives Carla some insight that his wife
Yeah.
is like a weak point. So I was
Yes.
wondering, so this guy Bill Hayden that ends up being
Uh-huh.
the mole, which probably should have given spoilers, but so he is the one who's having the affair with Smiley's wife. So
Right.
I'm wondering, did he do that as a cover for his espionage activities, or was it just convenient?
Okay, so Carla, Hayden says it was Carla's idea that I sleep with your wife. Basically, I
Yeah.
think Carla was screwing with George Smiley.
Yeah.
I think is what it was. Is like
But he
he
also
was
knew it was a weak point because of how he had
yeah, but he
interrogated him in the
was he
past.
was
Yeah.
told he was trolling him. He's like, you
Yeah.
should go sleep with
Yeah.
him. Hayden was like, okay. By the way, Smiley's wife was Hayden's cousin, which is really
Yeah,
weird.
I saw that. I didn't
That's
pick up
odd.
on that from the book, but I did see that. But it
That's
gives
weird.
him a little bit, it's an interesting tactic because they know how smart Smiley is, right? They know he's a
Yes.
really smart guy and very professional and very capable. So they decide to do that because they know he's smart enough to second guess his own thinking about Bill Hayden because he knows he has personal reasons to hate the guy. If you
Hmm.
see what I mean. That's a very high
Yeah.
level chess move to be
Yeah,
like,
but
this guy's smart enough that he'll discount the guy he hates. Because most
yep.
people would go after the guy they hate first thing, right? Like if it was
Yeah.
me, I'd be like, that's the mole, kill him, right
Right,
away.
right, right.
Or
But
I
at the
would just
same,
have him
but
killed.
at
I
the
don't
same
know.
time, it gave Hayden away because Hayden was in bed with his wife the night that Trudeau was shot, and so it messed up the whole timeline of Hayden's excuse.
Explain that to me because I saw that that was a plot point and I couldn't figure it
Yes.
out. What
Okay.
happened with that? Because he shows up
So
first at the office in response because he was over at their house.
yes.
What does that mean? Is that was he there on purpose to hear the information or explain that to me if you
No,
can?
no, he was supposed to leave
Okay.
and find out. Like his cover was that he was going to find out from his club, from the ticker tape at his club. So
Hmm.
he's going to go by his club. However, the news agency in Czechoslovakia broke the story early.
Okay.
Okay. So he got a call. The guy that was basically the night operator for the Secret Service tried to get in touch with Smiley, called Smiley's house,
Right.
and said there's been a shooting. Now, when he did that, it was after the club had been opened. I'm sorry, it was after the club would have been closed.
Right.
Okay. So the next thing you know, Hayden shows up. He says, oh, I found out about it from my club. Okay. But the club would have already been closed. So the only way
Right.
he could have found out about it was from Smiley's wife. And so Smiley put two and two together and said, that means you would have known before because he says when he comes in, he says Prideaux was shot or something like
Uh-huh.
that. Basically, he knows more than Smiley's wife would have been able to tell him
Oh, okay. 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 I
because the
see.
night
I
operator
see.
said there's been a problem in Czechoslovakia or whatever.
Right.
Hayden shows up
And
and
then he was
says,
able to know what that
yeah,
meant
Hayden
because
shows up
yeah,
and
okay.
says, oh, Prideaux's been shot. Well, how did you know Prideaux's been shot? Oh, I stopped by my club and it was on the ticker tape.
Right, right, right,
You know,
right.
well, your club would have been closed. So you must have already known that it was Prideaux and that he was shot.
So that's how they figure out basically that he's the mole is essentially through that's it's so subtle. It's hard for me to parse it out and figure out how
Yeah.
that means that, but It's good. It's good stuff. This book tends to reward paying close attention to it, if you know what I mean. Like if
Mhm.
you go back and you kind of think through, well, what happened here and who's who? It's pretty well plotted out and it's pretty well
Yeah.
described. So there's a lot of small characters and a lot of little. It reminds me actually I remember I read Hunt for Red October. My dad was a big Tom Clancy fan,
Mhm.
and I read the book and I enjoyed it and I had this like atmospheric idea of what was going on. But when I watched the movie, I was suddenly like, oh, now I know what was going
Oh,
on,
now
who
that's
all
what
these
he was
people
doing.
were.
Yeah.
Like, I
Yeah.
just maybe I'm just dumb. I don't know. When I read a complicated book, I just have a tendency to not figure out who is who and what's
Yeah.
going on. So,
I'll tell you what makes this book difficult is there's a huge cast of characters, which is fine. I mean, Tolkien
definitely.
has a huge cast of characters.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
But the difference is John le Carre has this really irritating habit of calling them both by their first name and or their last name. He's
Hmm.
very inconsistent. At some time, he'll call somebody John. At the other time, he'll call them, Esterhouse or something. And you're
Right.
like, wait, who is Esterhouse? Oh, he
Yeah.
was talking when he says John, blah, 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 blah. Esterhouse looked at him and you're like, well, why don't you call him John? He just called him John. Why would you call him Esterhouse if you just called him John?
Yeah.
It's really irritating.
Most of those
I,
guys are not that distinctive. You know what I mean? Like Alaline, Esterhouse, Bland, all
yes,
the, it's
no,
like,
they're really not.
it's just a different white guy that works at
So
MI6. I can't quite
I
remember
guess
who
I'm
his real
sensitive
name.
to that too because the last book I published,
Hmm.
People's Beer, by the way, it's Ted Mack and America's First Black Brewery, the Rise and Fall of People's Beer. Go buy it. When I published that one, the editor told me not to do that because I did that. I would call the guy Mac,
First name, last name.
first name,
Yeah.
last name at times, depending on the context of how I was referring to him. And she said, you know what, you got to just pick one, probably just
Hmm.
use their last name and just go with that because it's confusing. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I
Yeah.
read this and I'm like, yes, it is very confusing. Knock it off, look, Carrie.
Yeah,
What
I
do you
could
know
see
about
it.
what do you
Yeah,
know about writing?
in terms of the writing, I actually watched a video. There was this lady doing a review of the book, and I wasn't very impressed with her reviewing skills, but she was complaining about being immersed in all this vocabulary from the spy world and about how there were a bunch of things going on behind the scenes and about all the different characters and about, Britishisms and things like that. And I was thinking about it, I was like, well, I actually kind of that's one of the appeals to me of reading about like espionage is
Yeah,
getting thrown into this world where I don't know all
right.
these words. And I was thinking to myself about how I wrote my book and I would be at writing group and there were a couple of ladies in the group that would complain about having all these characters and all the things going on and stuff. And I was thinking, is it something male when you read where you enjoy being immersed in like a confusing world? Like if you
Hmm.
think about it, who's this? I mean, there are definitely women who like Lord of the Rings, so I'm not trying to make that argument, but the stereotype is a nerdy guy that wants to read the book and learn everything about it, right? Like in fantasies like that a lot of the time. It's like you
Right.
learn about this whole other world and all this terminology and you're immersed in it and you're sort of left to swim, thrown into the ocean and you're supposed to swim for yourself and figure out what's going on. And I was thinking, is that a dude thing? Is that something that guys like to do for some reason? Because that's
I think it's a subject matter. I think we like
definitely espionage. No, yeah, no question about it.
I think we like, we like inside baseball.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
And so if people are he'll use terms and not define them. Because one of the points is that he has been on the inside and so he knows the jargon. So then we get to learn the jargon like an
hmm.
insider.
I love that, right?
And
That's the
if he had
appeal
to
to me.
if he had to explain these things to us, that would be different.
Hmm.
We learn by how he uses it, how
Yeah,
somebody else reacts to it, all
contextual
this other
clues
stuff,
and
right?
stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Like that's how we learn about it's like picking up another language, right? If
Hmm.
he said, "Oh, this person's a mole." By the way, a
A
mole is
mole is a
this.
person. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
that would be
yeah.
really annoying. Yeah,
Then it would be annoying, and it would lose its effect. It's like
yeah.
we're kind of an observer, and now we're in the know.
Hmm.
We're part of the cool crowd because now we know what
Totally,
that means.
totally. Yeah, I remember really enjoying the naval terminology in Hunt for Red October, like
Yeah,
especially in the film. It's like
yeah,
con, sonar, eye, crazy Ivan. Like I love
yeah,
that stuff. Like
yeah,
that's
yeah,
so much
yeah,
fun to learn them. I don't know if that's a dude thing or what, but it was striking me that way because I found that complaint multiple times from female reviewers and from the women that read my book. It was like, yeah,
yeah.
I don't want you to know exactly what's going on. I want you to have to
Yeah,
figure
I
it
mean,
out. And that,
maybe there is a bit of a gender issue, although gender is a spectrum. But maybe they're maybe,
For those of you out there in Radio Land, you could not see the smirk on Clint's face when he said that.
so maybe it has something to do
That
with
was a
that.
little
I don't know,
disingenuous.
but I mean, who knows? I've never read The Devil Wears Prada, and
No, neither have I.
maybe in a fashion they use insider stuff for
Well, but
handbags and
I think they do. I think that's actually a really good point. I think being immersed in the fashion world would be part of, maybe it's like you said, it's just the subject matter.
perhaps, yeah,
a man wants to be thrown into a fantasy world of swords and dragons and
yeah,
or
spies and
espionage or something, but
espionage, yeah,
and a woman
yeah,
wants to be thrown into fashion or like Pride and
yeah,
Prejudice where you're trying to learn about British society in the late
right,
1700s or something. So
right,
maybe it's just about the subject matter and how interested you are.
perhaps, yeah, perhaps.
That's a good point. That's a good
But that
point.
is one of the things that made Le Carre made his novels famous was the jargon.
Mhm.
Like
Totally.
he wouldn't define it. He would use insider information, and you assumed, and he could make stuff up, but you just assumed he had the authority. Oh, this
Right.
must be what they call it.
Well,
And
apparently he invented the term mole.
yeah, apparently
Like just
so.
made it
Yeah,
up for the book. That's kind of shocking to me because I feel like they use that term in espionage today. I think they
they
actually
do.
say that.
Yeah,
And and
I've
and
seen 100 movies where they use that.
is it a honey pot or a honey trap? I feel like
I
I
think a
always
honey.
said
I think a honey trap. I think a
okay,
honey
because I feel
pot.
like I
Honey
said honey
pot.
pot.
I think honey pot is a latrine.
Really? I've never heard that.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's like a porta potty. It's a honey pot.
Did I ever tell you the story about the prettiest girl I ever met in my entire life?
Was she a honey pot or a honey trap?
She ended up being she ended up being an actress when she grew up. This was
Uh-huh.
we were kids when I met her, and I was just like, "Oh my, I've never talked to anyone this beautiful." And
Uh-huh.
she ended up playing the honey trap in that show with Claire Danes. I can't remember what the show was called, but it was like an espionage
Oh,
show.
oh, 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 oh. Yes.
Not
Oh
not
gosh.
Homeland.
It was Homeland, I
It's
think.
Homeland. Yeah, Homeland.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this girl that I was friends with when I was a little kid ended up playing the honey trap
Wow, that's
in that show.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's
anyway,
great. Much better than honey
that's
pot.
how pretty she was that she could play the girl pretty enough to be like the honey trap
Yeah.
in that show. So
I always thought Claire Danes was a beautiful woman. Very, very pretty.
Claire Danes, huh?
Yeah,
Interesting.
Claire
I
Danes.
liked her.
You didn't think so?
I
In
thought she
Romeo
was
and Juliet?
cute. Yeah, I thought she was cute, and I thought that she was I liked her. Like she's very
Yeah.
like my generation. Like she appealed to me in that way, but
Yeah,
I
yeah.
wouldn't have said she was like the most beautiful.
I didn't say
Like
the most beautiful. I just
yeah.
always
Oh,
thought that
yeah,
she was
okay.
beautiful. Yeah.
She's attractive. She's attractive. And
Ooh, look at
that's the
us.
word
Yeah.
I'm like a holistic way.
Get a little blackberry brandy in you, and you start getting
Suddenly
picky.
pontificating. Well, yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'm always picky. Well, we haven't talked about there's two things. There's two things that we
Okay.
didn't talk about. First of all, how much this book is about British decline. That's a huge part of what's going on in the story, and that's kind of obvious, I would think. And it must have been really hard for them to deal with that kind of situation after
Yeah.
having been the British Empire within these people's memory.
Right.
And that's, I think, supposed to be sort of the motivation for Bill Hayden is just not knowing what to do with himself in this new world. But also, he's based on a character, like a real guy, Kim Philby, that
Yes.
flipped over. And I think, like you said before, I think was part of John le Carre's career falling apart. There was a bunch
Yeah.
of there were several different,
Yeah.
I guess they were
He's
moles.
the one that outed John le Carre in 1963 when he finally immigrated, left and went to Moscow, and but he was a double agent. And it was really interesting. He gave a lecture. This is that Kirby guy or whatever. Is that
Kim Philby, yeah.
Kim Philby rather? So Philby gave a lecture in Moscow in like in early 1980s, and he said that he was able to get away with it for so long because of the British class system,
Yeah.
because they refused to believe that somebody who went to Oxford, somebody who came from a like a royal lineage and an
Right.
upstanding background could do this type of thing, right? And that's sort of the theme for Hayden, Bill Hayden.
Yeah.
Same thing. He's related to royalty, minister of parliament, all this other junk. He couldn't do it. Look at him. He's like the example of British blue blood type of
Hmm.
thing. And so there's that. There's the classism of British society. Now the funny thing is, John le Carre, Cornwell, didn't come from that. His dad was a con man. He came
Yeah, I saw that.
from a kind of a rough scrabble type of background. So he didn't have that baggage.
Right.
He could be kind of an observer of that. And I think that's absolutely right. I mean, I think they've gone really hard the other way now. Where now like they're very much Like, we don't want to have anything to do with the conservative British class system, and instead we're going to err on the side of everything opposite of that.
Yeah, the image of modern Britain is very much based in the like the tough guy watching football and headbutting you more so than Bill
Well,
Hayden type.
I think that was image of it in the 1990s, and but I think now it's really become they're battling ideological different ideologies within the government. They went hard to the transgender side. They went hard to the every immigrant is welcome side.
Mm.
And I'm not casting anything on any ideologies, but I'm saying they went hard the other way. They were very conservative. Britain was known to be, even in their most liberal phases in the
Mhm.
1970s, they were, British socialism was in full bloom. But even then, leagues more conservative than they are now. And so
Yeah.
they've really gone hard the other way. And I think maybe it's a reaction, generational reaction or a class reactionary system or something. I mean, remember Marx was in England. I think he wrote in London, didn't he?
That sounds right. That sounds
So
like that might be true. I mean, the Industrial Revolution was very palpable there, so it would make sense if
yeah,
you were sort of inspired in that way, even though it
yeah.
didn't take in Britain the same way it
Oh
did in
no,
other
no.
places. But
But in the 1970s, when Carre wrote this, I mean, England was going through a very socialist kind of phase. I mean, they had,
well, that's what I meant about the Cold War. You didn't know which way it was going to go. It could have
yeah,
gone either way. It really
yeah,
was only later where we started to sort of where you realize it was just an excuse for a different kind of fascism, like the communism of the Soviet Union. They were just as full of it as anybody in the West was, you know. In the 70s, I think most people were thinking that the West was corrupt, destined to decline and stuff. And then people realized, no, actually the Soviet Union is just as full of it as we are. There's a
yes.
moral equivalency here, or maybe
Yeah.
even the West is a little better. It's an interesting time and it's an interesting thing to look at. Did anything surprise you about this book? You said you read The Spy Who Came In From the Cold before, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, I did. So what surprised me about this was the thread of homosexuality.
The
It was
gay.
never
Yeah.
gay. Yeah. And
Yeah,
last
definitely.
night, one of our favorite Simpsons episodes is Homer's phobia. Have you ever seen
Okay.
that one?
Oh, no.
That's
That's
when
funny.
they meet this guy named John who's gay, and he's played by John Waters. Um,
Oh,
yeah,
interesting.
and
An
and uh,
interesting cameo.
and Homer's like, that guy is so cool. I can't believe he doesn't have a bunch of girlfriends and everything else, and all this other stuff. And and then they're like, you do know that he's gay, right? And he's like, what? No, no, no. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I danced with a gay. Anyway, it's a great episode, but it was surprising that
Yeah.
the toughest guy, I mean, obviously it's done on purpose, but the toughest guy in this book is a guy named Jim Prideaux, who was
Hmm.
shot in the back. He was supposed to be the James Bond, right?
Yeah. Right.
Turns out he might have been a gay lover, the
Of
mole
Bill
named
Hayden,
Bill Hayden.
apparently. Yeah.
Yeah, who was also very much made out to be gay. He had apparently there's a sailor that he was having
Yeah.
a love affair
Yeah.
with, but
And a
they
couple of
leave
girls too. So this guy seems to have been, I don't know whether you would
just having
be,
a
I'm
good
not sure.
time. Well, I guess he
What's the
was
definition of
bohemian.
pansexual? That's where you just do it with everybody,
I
I
think the
think.
word was bohemian, wasn't it?
Yeah, there
He
you
was
go. There you
very
go.
bohemian.
Well, yeah,
Not,
to be honest, that was probably my big surprise as well, was that. Otherwise, this was pretty much what I expect. The whole James Bond foil thing for the main character was interesting to me. The fact that like
yes,
he's very starkly drawn as being not James Bond. And that's
yeah,
kind of cool. I like that. I don't know if it was a huge surprise. I didn't really know anything about this book or this property at all, so it's there's not
yeah.
not a lot to say. I'm surprised that he invented those terms we talked about, mole and honey trap, and
Honey trap.
not because he knew them from working, he just made them up. I guess I foisted this upon you. So would you
Yeah,
vote for it as a classic?
as a classic. I don't know what changed my mind. Sell me.
Well, I think this is an interesting. So this is the first thing I know of. Like when you're coming from in the 60s, you're talking about James Bond and
Mhm.
that being the depiction of what espionage is like. And just to have this be so realistic and so the characters are much more complex. As a foil to James Bond, and this just being a lot more realistic and sort of actually depicting what I would think espionage is actually like, I don't think there's anything before it. I don't think there's anything like it for that. I think this led to a whole bunch of books that are more like it. I think that Tom Clancy is coming out of this, sort of trying to maybe span both things, like keeping it realistic, but also keeping it a little more exciting. But I think this kind of led to, to his work, and I like how it's much more realistic. I think it's a more realist depiction of what the world of spycraft would be like.
Yeah. Thing is, like, I don't know about this book.
Oh, okay.
See, I've never seen the
You've
movie.
actually read more than one of his books to be able to compare, and
Yeah.
I
I
haven't.
mean,
So
The Spy Who Came In From the Cold was his best-selling book. I mean, it was focused on one guy and everything that sort of happened with this guy. So it was basically one of those field agents who was
okay.
trying to turn somebody, and there's a bunch of tragedy at the end and so forth. And it was a Hemingway book, like that feeling you get at the end of Hemingway. You're like, oh, like
Well,
everything's
this was a little like that, wasn't it? I mean, I guess the bad guy's kind of punished, but at the same time, nobody's really getting a lot of redemption in
yeah,
it.
everything's still kind of gray.
Yeah,
Like there's no happy
yeah,
ending. And it was the spy who came in from the cold was very much that. It was like at the very end that, the resolution is like, oh, that stinks. That. And I always remember, was it Farewell to Arms or For Whom the Bell Tolls, where at the very end his girlfriend dies during childbirth, and like the last line of the book is, so he walked back to the apartment, period, and then alone, period, in the rain, period. It's like, oh,
that
geez,
sounds like
just
farewell. I think that's a farewell to arms because if I remember right, for whom the bell tolls, it's like the attack
the
on the
machine,
bridge, and
the
they all
machine
like
gunner,
die.
yeah. So he
Yeah,
dies, yeah.
yeah.
But so Farewell to Arms, like where he's the ambulance driver, and she dies during childbirth. Anyway, so walked back to the apartment alone in the rain.
Hmm.
Oh, this is terrible.
Yeah,
This, after
yeah.
everybody just died. This
Uh-huh.
sucks. The human condition sucks. And so you're right. I guess this did have that. The Spy Who Came In From the Cold. You should read that. It's really very
Okay.
much that, and it was very much reactionary to James Bond because
Hmm.
that came out in like '62. Like Doctor No came out in like '62 or something like
That
that.
sounds right. Yeah.
I will say, as a body of work, I will toast the classic. Now, this was his.
John
This
le
was
Carre's
his.
work in
Yeah,
general. Like, yeah. Okay.
yeah. I think I would do that. Like it's sort of like when you do J.R.R. Tolkien and you pick The Hobbit over the Lord of the Rings,
Right.
as the one to represent him. I would toast him because of Lord of the Rings. Yeah, so I'll toast it
Oh, okay. All
as
right.
yeah, so
Okay.
I'll toast it
I
as
was concerned there
based
for a
on that.
minute. Sounds like we got this one into the canon. So,
Yeah, we
all
did.
right. We are toasting this. We are allowing this into the canon, sort of leaning towards being for John le Carre and not just this particular book. But I thought this was pretty good. Well, for
All
Dave
right, brother.
McArthur,
And for Dr. Professor Clint Lanier.
peace out, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Bye.
That's it for episode 119 of Toasting the Classics. For those playing along at home, get some nice loud bottles of Budweiser and clink them together as we discuss the 1979 film The Warriors. I know I said we'd do it before, but this time I swear it's actually happening. If you'd like to get in touch, email us at toastingtheclassics@gmail.com. Send us show ideas, comments, complaints, or let us know where you're hiding your secret spy journals. Check out my blog at theattractivenuisance.com and follow us on X at @ractivenuisance. Our music was written by Michelle McArthur. See you next time on Toasting the Classics.